Greetings and welcome back. This is part 4 in the introductory series for the 2023 starter guides for the Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes mobile game. We've gone through 3 intro videos. We've explained kind of how the game works and what game modes are important. We talked through the importance of fleet, mod, guild, some of the important parts of the game. And then we spent a lot of time in the last holocron talking about spending and how to use either crystals or cash in the right way to make sure that you're getting the right account progress. And now we're going to talk about account building. We're going to talk about some of the fundamental things that I've developed as a strategy over the course of the years that hopefully will help other people build their accounts in the right way, think about future planning, and also explain how I'm going to be doing not only the 2023 starting guides, but future character building guides and things like that are going to be done in a block farming format, and I'll explain what that means. All right, so first thing we want to talk about is the importance of relics. If you're new to the game, your characters go through basically 3 phases. The first phase is sort of a gear 1 to gear 11. It takes a lot of the same gear. The requirements to go from gear 8 to gear 11, a lot of Carbantes, Chirotechs, stun guns, stun cuffs, Mark III hollow projectors. It's the same gear over and over again that holds you up. Then you got to get the character from gear 11 to gear 12. That requires a few different pieces and a lot of the same pieces, but there definitely is a transition getting into gear 11 and gear 12. And once you get a character at gear 12, you can put 6 dot mods in them. And then the next step is to take that character to gear 13 and equip a relic. And then you have to level up that relic. Okay. Now the step from gear 12 to relic is a big one. That gear is really hard to collect. It takes a long time. And you have to focus on it. You have to farm certain pieces off of nodes. You have to focus on getting the right pieces out of the shop. So it's quite a bit of a project. And for new players, I've heard this from a lot of new players. They get into the game. They get pretty comfortable with the idea of getting a character to gear 12, but getting a character to relic level is pretty daunting. And, they want to play the game for a little bit, get some gear 12 characters, and they'll get around to relicing a character, sometime. But I'm here to tell you, the game is made now for relic characters. It's made to be played by relic characters. The events are at the power level of relic characters. So if you're waiting around to start building characters to relic, you're missing key critical parts of the game. So the relic character levels are pretty much expected. It's also a step change for ships. And again, we're trying to focus on building good fleets. If we don't relic our pilots, we're not going to have good fleets, right? So getting relic characters isn't something that can wait. The journeys in the game need relic characters. The higher powered characters like Galactic Legends, it all focuses on relics. So the important thing is we're going to get started right away with relics. As soon as we get to level 85, it's going to be on our mind, and we're going to start establishing this pattern of relicking. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to divide account building up into 3 layers. So the first layer of account building, what takes your priority is working on one specific character that you're building. You're going to focus farming activities, especially with fleet energy, and sometimes your light and dark side energy needs to be focused on the gear that character is going to need to go to gear 13. Beyond spending that energy, like I said in the prior holocron, the game is going to give you a lot of loot from events. You're going to get from guild things, from raids, from galactic challenges, from all over in the game. So what I call tier 2 of account building is where you take all of this gear that you're getting from the shops and events and elsewhere in the game, and you're working on building your next set of characters to gear 12. So for example, if you're on a journey where you need to relic 8 characters, at the start of that journey, for me, I might only have 1 or 2 of those characters built up to gear 12. As I relic them, I'll build another character to gear 12. I'll relic that character. I'll be building another character to gear 12. So the second layer is where you're building up all of your journey characters and getting them ready to relic. And any leftover gear then goes on your future projects, other things that you're trying to build. For example, if you're working on the Executor journey, first you have to pay attention to the characters that are in that journey, keep them going, prioritize all the gear for them. But then if you've gone as far as you can with those characters, and let's say there's a Padme team that you're also working on, and those characters can be built up with the gear that you still have, then by all means, that becomes part of your second tier as well, building up the other characters that you want. The third layer is collecting the character shards and ship shards, the hard node farming for your current or future projects. So just for an example, on my daily refreshes, when my account resets, sometime in the next couple hours after account reset is usually when I play, I'll do all of my resets. I'll do all of my hard node farming then. I'll farm the characters that are on my list of the things that I'm building. And then I work in 1 week blocks. So I don't try to collect all the gear that I need for one specific character and then click a button. I literally farm for 7 days, and then I go in and I apply the gear first to the relic characters, and then to the characters I'm building up, and then to any other projects I have on the side. And I found a lot of value in that because at the end of the week, I have a pool of gear. I know what characters I'm focused on, and it really helps me build in the right way. For people who know what characters they're building and just work on them one character at a time, that's fine too. You can do that, but just remember, work first on your journey characters and get them to gear 12, and always prioritize getting materials for the relics, whatever your relic project is, as the number one priority for your farming. Okay, so for your first relic character, there's no waiting period. So while we're leveling up to 85, there's going to be a character or two that we're going to be approaching gear 12, or maybe even gets to gear 12 as we hit 85. And as soon as we get that, we're going to start working on the relic. It's not wait a while and start your first relic. It's like as soon as you can relic a character, we're going to establish that as the tier 1, and building up characters as tier 2, and farming shards as tier 3. And we're always going to have those things going on all at the same time. We're going to be working on shards, working on characters, building the relic. Now that first relic that you build could easily take you 3 or 4 weeks to complete. The next relic that you build could easily take you 3 or 4 weeks to complete. So these first relics are not going to go quickly, right? Because the bank is empty. You don't have those materials. You don't. If you have hyperdrive, you may have some of the more materials than free-to-play players. But we're going to be collecting the Gear 13 materials out of the shops. We're going to be making heavy use of the shard shop, for example, and we're going to be farming that gear. So don't worry if the first few relics, let's say it takes 3 months for you to get your first 4 relics. It's okay, right? Like the bank is empty. You've got to farm almost everything, so it takes a while. It also means that we have to select really carefully. The first few relics that we build need to have a really big impact, and they need to help us get the right gear, the right events, the right participation, so that we can accelerate that. For a developed account, for example, my Loquitur account's 2 years old, and I can relic a character on average every 10.5 days. For the Optitio account that's about 1 year old, my average is about 12 days. So as your count develops, the relicking process gets faster. And I say as long as you're relicking one character every 2 weeks on average, it's pretty good. That's about the best you can do. If you want to know exactly how all that works, I have a gear guide out there. A lot of people have followed my gear guide with really great success. So it talks about a lot of the most efficient ways to get the gear for relicking characters. So if you want to figure out what characters are important to gear, again, the highest impact characters that you want to go on a journey. So you go to the journey guide. Once you get a journey selected, when you go into your character screen, on the squads tab, you can look at all your characters, you can look at squads, or you can actually look at the journey guide once you've got a journey selected, right here within your characters tab, right? And if it's got both characters and ships, like here we have the profundity journey highlighted, you can look at the characters. So if you say, okay, I'm going for profundity, and you want to know what characters to relic, there it is. There's your list. Those are your high impact characters, okay? So get started on a journey right away. When you're on a journey, be careful spending gear elsewhere. So you want to make sure that you're farming gear, you're working on these characters first. And while you're working on these characters, if you just go in and let's say decide you want Darth Treya and start putting a bunch of gear on her, it may affect your ability to gear up your journey characters. Now with the gear changes here at the end of 2022, it should be much easier to stay on track on a journey and still be able to gear up other characters. But still, make sure that you prioritize the characters that you really want your gear on. If you want to know, like for a particular character, he's stuck on a level that takes 3 Carbantes, and you say, man, how many more of these Carbantes do I need? You can look it up on SWGOH. It will show you all the gear tiers. It will show you a summary of the gear. You can look at it a bunch of different ways. But basically, you can see what you're in for and know not to spend it on other characters. Most characters can be brought to gear 7 or 8 without interfering with the journey. So even if you're just starting up some other characters and you take them to 7, it's not likely that's going to interfere with your journey. Be aware, you do need 7 stars to get to gear 12. You need gear 12 for 6.mods. And of course, you can't relic anything until it's gear 12. And the idea is when you're working on a relic project, you always need to have your next gear 12 ready. So if you look at the state here, my profundity journey, I have 1 character relicked. I've got 2 characters at gear 12 ready to go. And I've got a couple other characters that are still in various stages of being built up. So as I go along, I'll continue to relic Jyn Erso and Mon Mothma. I'll continue to bring Radis to 7 stars so he can get relicked. And I'll continue to build up the gear on the other characters. So again, first layer, I'm working on a relic character. In this case, Mon Mothma is the one that I'm actively working on. I'm putting gear pieces on her for the relic level. The second tier is getting these characters here to gear 12. And the third, of course, is shard farming for Dash Rendar and Radis to get them to 7 stars, as an example. Okay, when we talk about farming hard nodes, characters and ships need to be planned up to 7 months in advance. So statistically, if you start with 0 shards for a character or ship that needs that drops 1 shard at a time per instance of you getting them, statistically it takes 28 weeks to get that character to 330 shards. So for a ship going 0 to 330 shards, somewhere between 28 and 32 weeks. So if you're not planning that way ahead of time, you won't have the shards you need by the time you're on the journey. So that's why we need to plan ahead. Double drop characters, of course, you just cut that time in half. I set a standard of 14 weeks to fully farm a double drop character. So that means, on average, for a given journey, again, this is just across a whole bunch of different journeys, on average, you need to spend around 400 energy per day on character shards and ship shards, just from your light and dark side energy. So 240 energy is generated every day for free. You get 45 energy 3 times a day, like we talked about before, and you can do 3 refreshes that each give you 120 energy. So just with the basic 3 refreshes and your free energy, you get 635 energy a day. So if you're spending 400 on hard nodes, it leaves you about 200 and 250 to work on relic gear. So it may seem like, man, how am I ever going to relic a character if I'm farming all these hard nodes? But you do have to split the difference. and a lot of these characters and ships really take a long time. So that's the way you need to think about it. And most of your relic materials are going to come out of the shops anyway with good shop use. So again, follow the gear efficiency guide so that you're only farming the things that you absolutely need to farm. And right at first, you're going to need to farm the injector handles and the gold gear for the right side for sure. So if you're less efficient in your play, what will happen, maybe you can't relic characters as fast, but you're spending the right amount on farming shards. What will happen is you'll get to a point where you're finishing out your characters, and that'll free up more energy to relic characters a little bit faster. So overall, it'll take you longer on your relic cycles, but yeah, you can change that ratio if you absolutely need to. So the graphical concept that I'm going to use to kind of show this, if the characters on the bottom, these blocks are going to be the weeks that we're working on a character to get them to relic, then we have to have those characters to relic in the first place. So we need to plan ahead, farming the shards and the characters. So at the top here, you'll see that there's different characters and ships that we're farming, and they're going to take a certain amount of time. And I guess the stuff at the top is misleading because that's actually, each one represents 2 weeks. The way that I've done it in the finished form, each one of these blocks represents 2 weeks. So a character will take 14 weeks and a ship will take 28 weeks, for example. But you plan out these character farms, and then once you get to the point where you're relicking them, those characters get relicked. You start on the next set of characters. You're farming those while you're finishing out the relics. And it kind of turns into this journey where you got to farm the characters and farm the relics, and it forms this kind of a block pattern. Again, where whatever you're farming is what you're planning to relic in the future. So we're going to try to use that in the build guides. So key points. Ships and single drop characters need to be planned way ahead. For non-relic journeys like Commander Luke Skywalker, the Revens, etc., you don't need to relic characters for that journey, but you still need to plan out the cycles. And if you're on a big journey and let's say all the characters are finished and you still have 5 more characters to relic, and that's going to take you a couple more months, that's a good time to try to fit in like CLS characters or Revan characters and do those non-relic journeys. Galactic Legends are just a series of blocks together. So if I did a guide right now for SLKR, for example, it would look like 3 of these blocks. The first block, we'd be working on the finalizer requirements. So the ships and the characters that are going to participate in the finalizer event, we're going to start farming those while we're still on our prior journey. So let's say, for instance, we've just started out. Maybe we want to build a Padme team or a Jedi team or something like that. We'll start the finalizer journey while we're working on that team. So we'll build a team, work on the finalizer journey. As we start the actual SLKR journey, the next block will be the pilots for those ships. So block 1 would be farming up the characters that are pilots and the ships. Block 2 is going to be relicking the pilots, finishing the ships. And block 3 is going to be the non-pilot characters and finishing out the journey. And then in block 3, we've already farmed all the characters and ships. So while we're finishing out the relics in block 3, the next journey, whatever's coming after SLKR, we're already collecting shards for that in block 4. So it kind of, you can see that from this pattern, right? So we farmed up a bunch of characters. As we finish out the relics, there's blank space above, and that's where we've started collecting shards and ships for our next journey. So that's going to overlap. So that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so block 0 in my starting guides, I am going to start out level 1 to 85 free to play. There's no relics until level 85. So during the first 3.5 months, we're going to do collecting. Hyperdrive bundle players start with level 85, and incomplete characters. We still need to spend time farming things to 7 stars, but it will cut a bunch of time off the journey in total. But the guides are going to be good for both, either 1 to 85 or starting with the hyperdrive bundle and following a similar plan. The first few characters that we were working on in the first few relics are selected based on everything we've talked about so far. They're going to be based on event income, and the first relic is going to be based on not just like what's the best character in the game, but what can have the most impact for the least resources. So we're going to see that. Journeys that have characters that you can buy out of the shop are a big advantage. So for example, Jedi Knight Revan requires a bunch of different characters to be farmed, and there's really not a good way to get those characters out of the shop. So that's actually a journey that's become much harder. Those characters used to be on fleet nodes, and it was real easy to pick up those characters off the fleet nodes and get a Jedi Knight Revan. Now that it's moved to light and dark side energy, it's much more difficult. And so it's not very efficient for the early game because you just don't have energy to spare, and you can't buy characters out of the shop. A Padme team, on the other hand, you can get a lot of the characters for that. Jedi Knight Anakin you have to farm, but Ahsoka you can get out of the shop. Mace Windu you can get out of the shop. Qui-Gon Jinn you can get out of the shop. So journeys like that look very attractive very early in the game because you can buy the shards instead of buy the shards for different shop currencies instead of having to farm them. Many journeys have a bottleneck resource. For example, JMK looks like an easy journey. It doesn't look too bad. But you have to understand, you have to look at all the requirements carefully because it does require a Wat Tambor at 7 stars. And Wat Tambor only comes from Darkside GOTB, or with the new system in place for Guild Event Token 3 currency, you can buy Wat Tambor shards. But you're not going to have a 7-star Wat Tambor for probably 12 to 16 months of play as a new player. So if you go into the game and you say, okay, I want to do JMK first, you may be stuck for some period of time waiting for Wat Tambor to get to 7 stars. So always be careful to look at that. And, my guides are going to respect the fact that these characters, if they're hard to get, we're going to give you time to get them. All right, block 1, you select a journey. So in block 0, we've just been doing some account stabilization. Block 1 is where we start picking a journey, collecting the shards ahead of time, and then we'll go into the relic cycles. As I previously stated, I believe that based on logic, statistics, facts, what I know from the game right now, block 1 is going to be Executor or Profundity. I'm going to stabilize the account in block 0. We're going to build an Executor or a Profundity and optimize our fleet income as soon as we can. And that'll be most of our first year of play. So make no mistake, we're not just going to walk in there and get a massive ship for free. We're going to spend basically 38 to 50 weeks building these fleets. Okay, future blocks. So in the future, when I do starting guides, I'm going to use this block format where I show starting the character and ship farms ahead of time, then showing the relic cycle. So that's what we can expect going forward as the new standard. So what's next? This is it. This is the end of the intro. We've talked about SWGOH as a game. We've given concepts on the resources. And now it's time to go in to the 2023 starting guides themselves. And we'll talk you through block 0 and block 1 and help you start building a great account. And these intro videos, I hope, have explained why we'll be making the decisions that we'll be making, and you'll understand not just how to build what I tell you to build, but you'll understand why it looks that way. All right, that's going to wrap up the intro series. I do appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. Please remember to hit that like saber on the way out if you didn't hit it on the way in. I would appreciate it. It helps me. It helps the channel. I hope to see you in the next Holocron.